I'm a bioenergetic chiropractor by profession. I graduated a long time ago in '79, and I was excited. I wanted to bring wellness to the world, and that's what I did. 1983, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and that was quite a shock for me because the doctors gave him no hope and basically sent him home to die, which he did in 6 weeks. So during those 6 weeks, I kept asking myself, surely there was something that could have been done for him. 1983, no internet, right? So went to the library, started doing some research, called a few natural cancer clinics, which back then were few and far between, and I came to realize that there was something that could be done for my father. Unfortunately, for him it was too late, but I took that fire that lit inside my soul, and I started applying it to my practice and started seeing amazing things in my practice. So people with autoimmune diseases and cancer and lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and MS, all these diseases were reversing. And it wasn't so much what I was doing, I was teaching them what to do, but they were starting to apply the laws of the universe and the laws of nature and taking responsibility for their health and making lifestyle changes, eating better, managing their stress, taking specific nutrients like homeopathy and tinctures, herbal tinctures, and really taking responsibility for their health.
So talk to me about your own diagnosis and how it's kind of ironic because you were helping people and supposedly doing everything right.
Yeah, so 25 years into my practice, I discovered I was, headed to work, and I was in the shower and did a, breast self-exam, and bam, there it was. And I knew innately that it was not a benign cyst. My gut just told me it wasn't right. So that was pretty shocking for me. Here I was, Dr. V, helping all these people, and yet here I was facing breast cancer. So obviously that led me down the rabbit hole of research and soul searching, and how could somebody like me develop breast cancer? I'd been eating organic before organic was in style. I breastfed all my children, had home births. I was under chiropractic care. I exercised, did everything right, or so I thought. And here I was with a diagnosis of breast cancer.
Okay, so when you realized you had breast cancer, did you have the same fears as everybody else, or did you doubt yourself and your beliefs, because you had supposedly done everything right and now you have this diagnosis? Or were you like, nope, I'm good, it's 100% curable, let's get to work?
Well, obviously, at first, there's that shock. How could somebody like me develop breast cancer? There was some shame, frustration, anger, but there was no doubt in my mind. I knew that my body had an amazing capacity to heal. So I just needed to figure out what were the missing pieces of the puzzle. Because cancer cannot grow in a healthy body, period, right? Cancer is just a symptom. Any dis-ease, I like to break down the word disease. It's dis-ease, your body is not at ease. So any disease in your body is just a symptom. Your body's been trying to talk to you for a long time, so it's a matter of really paying attention and listening to see what it's telling you.
So what did your healing journey look like?
Well, my healing journey involved a lot of work. I did high doses of proteolytic enzymes, which basically weakens the outer coating or shell of the cancer cell. I did blood root internally and externally. I did a lot of homeopathy, naturopathy. I did a lot of cleansing, juicing, a lot of nutrients, a lot of resting, prayer, meditation, all those things, a lot of soul searching, and recognized that there were certain pieces of the puzzle that I had missed.
What were the pieces that you realized were missing?
For me specifically, I was very iodine deficient, and we know that iodine is extremely important when it comes to thyroid health and breast health. I was very sensitive to electropollution, and most people don't realize that EMFs is a key player in lowering your immune system and affecting a lot of processes in your body. And the emotional component was very, very big for me. I was Dr. V, the super mom, super doc, taking care of everything and everybody. But on the inside, I was really the wounded child, and lived my life as an adult as a wounded child until I discovered, a lot of issues that I had to deal with from childhood, like sexual abuse and, alcoholism in the family. And once I learned to self-nurture and self-love, forgive myself, forgive others, healing took place. So.
Amazing. So how did you heal? Did you seek help from someone else or emotional guidance, or did you do it on your own?
I did. I was, I saw a cognitive therapist. I did energy psychology with another therapist, things like EFT, rapid eye technology. I did several things. Journaling, meditation, things like that. And I did work with a integrative medical doctor who, monitored my progress. So.
Okay, so let's just dive right into the 7 essentials of healing. Did you discover them on your healing journey, or did you already kind of know about them and apply them to your healing journey?
So as I was going through my healing journey, and I realized that if it was frustrating and confusing for me to figure out really how to heal and what the steps were, imagine somebody who, hasn't had the time to do the research and do all the work. So I came to realize there were 7 simple steps that if you follow, you never have to fear cancer or any disease for that matter.
So what is essential number 1?
Essential number 1 is let food be your medicine. And that's pretty much a no-brainer. We know that cancer cells thrive in a very acidic environment, and a lot of the foods in the standard American diet are pretty acidic. The sugars, the sodas, the processed foods. So the goal is to be able to really move towards alkalinity. So more raw foods, more alkaline foods, fresh water, really looking at what you're putting in your body. Because as I told my clients, and I talk about in my book, you either feed the cancer or feed your body. You have a choice. And even the American Cancer Society says that cancer is a preventable disease if we change our lifestyle and if we improve our nutrition. So it's a known fact, but most people don't really do much about it.
There's so much conflicting information on diet. How do you guide your clients on what the right diet is for them? Is it a whole food, plant-based thing, or?
Well, there's no cookie-cutter diet, and everybody's an individual. So a simple formula to go by is 80% raw and 80% alkaline, and the 20% can be clean protein if you choose to do protein, some nuts, some seeds, some other variables there. But if you focus on a plant-based diet with a little bit of protein, if you want to add that, then you're on the right track.
Okay, what is essential number 2?
So essential number 2 is to reduce your toxic exposure. Now, obviously, we can't live in a bubble, and we know we live in a toxic world. But what can you do on a macro level and then on a micro level to really help reduce your toxic exposure? So look at your environment, first of all. Look at what you're putting outside in your yard, inside your house, the chemical fertilizers, pesticides inside the house. The average household has over 1,000 toxic chemicals, all the cleaners, the sprays, the artificial candles, all those things.
And also skin products, right? I mean, we assume they're safe because they're selling them and they're available to us, but they're full of toxins and chemicals, and they just go right in our skin.
Yes. The average person uses 167 chemicals every day just from their beauty care products. Their shampoos, their makeup, their lotions, their potions. Antiperspirants, for example, contains aluminum, and aluminum is classified as a metalloestrogen, which stimulates and mimics estrogen in the body. Then look at what you're putting inside your body. For example, we know that there can be toxicity buildup in the liver, in the kidneys, in the fatty tissue. Check for parasites, for viruses and bacteria and fungal infections, because those can be very toxic.
And you mentioned EMF radiation. How the heck do we protect against unseen dangers like that?
So EMF is really a huge issue. It's the deadliest toxin on the planet, I believe. You don't see it, feel it, taste it, but it's around us 24/7. So, for example, if you go to the website antennasearch.com, and I did it before we did this interview, there are over 800 cell towers and almost 3,000 antenna within a 1-mile radius of where we are. So imagine if an EMF wave can go through a brick wall, what is it doing when it goes through your body, right? And there's a lot of controversy. You don't really see that information on the national news. But if you go to the website bioinitiativereport.org, you'll see studies done by 29 independent scientists who gathered 10 years of data. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, DNA damage, suppression of the immune system, increased cancers, effect of hormones, and the list goes on and on.
So what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, the good news is there's patented technology that you can apply to your electronics. You can put things on your cell phone, on your routers. You can wear a pendant that helps to protect your bioenergetic field. And you can do simple things. Don't carry your cell phone on your body. For example, there's on one of the blogs on my website, there's a woman who carried her cell phone in her bra, and within a year she developed cancer and tumors in the shape of her cell phone. So, men and women, don't carry your cell phone on your body, and do little things. Turn off your router at night, when you go to bed, and don't have your cell phone by your head when you go to bed. So just, use them wisely and use protection.
Okay, so what is essential number 3?
So essential number 3 is to balance your energy. We are 1 billionth physical matter. The rest is all energy. Our cells communicate to each other through photonic light. Our acupuncture meridian is electrical. Our brain and nerve system is electrical. And so you have to look at things to help balance that energy. So what can you do? Well, acupuncture, chiropractic. People under chiropractic care have a 300% greater immune competence than those who are not. Exercise is a very simple thing that you can do to balance your energy. Balancing your hormones is very important. For example, women that are on thyroid medication are twice as likely to develop breast cancer than those who are not. So just making sure that your body's in balance. Something as simple as sleep. Did you know that if you don't get the right amount of sleep, it can turn off your cancer protective genes and turn on your cancer promoting genes? So simple things like that to help balance your energy.
Amazing. And essential number 4?
So essential number 4 is to heal your emotional wounds. Now this is the big one because it's very easy for us to get caught up in the physical aspect of healing, the supplements and the coffee enemas and all these things that we like to do. But taking the time to slow down your thoughts, manage your stress, slow your body down is so important. Dr. Douglas Brody, a medical doctor, worked with cancer patients for many years, and he came up with 5 traits of people who develop cancer. And they're things like poor relationship with your parents or your significant other, not able to handle stress properly, having more of a depressive attitude, putting other people first. So there's traits that we can look at for people that develop cancer. And if from an emotional point of view, you're on your fight or flight mode all the time, we now know through research and science that these things drive the sympathetic part of your nerve system. Sympathetic is the accelerator, the parasympathetic is the brake. And that parasympathetic drive actually can stimulate the production of stress hormones and cancer.
So how do you guide someone through healing emotional wounds? Sometimes they're buried so deep that we're not even aware we have them. It's really complex.
It is. It's a deep issue. First of all, you have to take the time to look at it. A lot of women, like myself, who were, just busy juggling life, just stuff it, right? I'll deal with it later. But to transform your health, you have to transform every part of you, including your emotions. I often tell women that if you keep doing the things you've always done, you're going to get the same results, right? So a healing journey is not just about the physical aspect, but it has to include the emotional, mental, and spiritual aspect. So work with a professional counselor. Work with somebody who specializes in energy psychology, things like EFT and EMDR and other things. Take time to meditate. We know that meditation slows down that sympathetic drive and stimulates parasympathetic drive in our body so that healing can take place. We now know, because of the science of psychoneuroimmunology, which means basically your thoughts affect your brain, which affect the rest of you. We know that there's a powerful connection there. The Heart Math Institute, for example, did an interesting study on the effect of our thoughts on our DNA. So they trained scientists to project their feelings to little petri dishes, I guess, of DNA. And so when they projected anger and frustration and guilt and hatred, guess what happened to the DNA? The telomeres, the ends of the DNAs fell off, the DNA shrunk, it didn't function very well. On the flip side, when they projected love, joy, and peace, and hope, gratitude, then the DNA, didn't contract, it just expanded and was vibrant and healthy. Another example of that is with World War II vets. They showed vets pictures and movie films of Japanese kamikaze, flyers, and they measured their stress levels. And of course, when they saw that, the body increased in stress. So they took it one step further, and they drew blood and put the blood in another room and measured the stress on the white blood cells. And at the same time that the World War II vet experienced this level of stress when he viewed these videos, his blood reacted the same way. They took it one step further and took the blood miles away at the exact same time that he experienced stress by watching that video. His blood reacted in the same way.
Outside of and away from the body, that's wild.
It is. So we can certainly see that, stress and our thoughts will affect our health, our immune system, our hormones. It's such an intricate part. So healing your emotional wounds is just such an important foundation for healing, because if you don't, you're not going to get well. And I see that all the time.
So if you can change your lifestyle, but you still have those emotional wounds negatively affecting you, then you end up in the same place, right?
Absolutely.
So what is the fifth essential?
So essential number 5 is to embrace biological dentistry. Now, most people don't realize that those silver fillings in their mouth are not silver at all, but they're an amalgam of different metals, mercury being 50% of that. And mercury is the most toxic element on the planet. Typical traditional dentists will say, well, it's an inert because it's in an amalgam. Well, if you go to YouTube and you search for smoking teeth or smoking tooth, you'll see a dentist scrub an extracted tooth that has an amalgam in it, and you can see the methyl mercury vapors coming off of that tooth. So every time you chew, every time you eat, drink something hot, those methyl mercury vapors are being released into your body. And we know mercury is a metalloestrogen, again, stimulates and mimics estrogen in the body, and it's very toxic to your immune system and your nerve system. So from a chemical point of view, you have to look at what's in your mouth. From an energetic point of view, your teeth are connected to your organs through your acupuncture meridian system. So if there is a toxic tooth sitting on a meridian for the breast or for the prostate or for the liver, whatever, it can certainly have an effect energetically on how that organ can function. And when I was in practice and I did the bioenergetic testing, there was always a relationship with the dental piece and health. And when you look at thermography images, for example, you can see inflammation in the mouth, and oftentimes you can see the lymph drainage, the red hot, going to the breast or to a particular organ. So there's definitely information out there, and there's more and more doctors, dentists that are in tune with biological dentistry and are trying to make a change. As a matter of fact, there's a lawsuit against the FDA right now about not protecting people concerning the effects of mercury in people's mouths.
When you remove the mercury fillings, you're also at risk for releasing toxicity into your body, right? So how do you do like a heavy metal detox before or after? How do you get around that?
That's a great question. So the true blue biological dentists that are certified will have special equipment to make sure that when you're having those mercury fillings removed, that you're protected. I mean, the dentists themselves will wear heavy-duty suits You'll have oxygen. You'll have a rubber dam in your mouth, so only one tooth is exposed. There's special high filtration mercury filters to make sure that you're getting very little exposure to that. And yes, you do a heavy metal detox, but in my opinion, you're in worse danger keeping those things in your mouth than you are having them removed. But you want to make sure that you're working with a certified, biological dentist. Another issue are root canals. A root canal is a dead entity. It's like having a dead gallbladder or a dead appendix in your body. No matter how aseptic you try to make it, there'll always be a pocket of anaerobic bacteria at the root, which suppresses your immune system. And again, if it's sitting on a meridian affecting a particular organ, then it could cause some problems. So in my opinion, I'm not a dentist, but if it were me, if I had any root canals, that would be one of the first places I would start.
So you'd have to go to a biological dentist and they would clean it out?
Well, they would actually extract the tooth and clean out the pocket and then use a bridge or something non-toxic to replace it. Don't get an implant because, again, an implant is a metal being drilled into the bone and it's going to affect that meridian. So the less toxicity in your mouth, the better.
So what is essential number 6?
So essential number 6 is to repair your body with therapeutic plants and herbs. Now, a good place to start is to go to pubmed.org, the United States Library of Medicine, because if you don't believe me, then you can always, look it up there. If you put in the search bar vitamin C and cancer, curcumin and cancer, bloodroot and cancer, you'll see thousands of studies come up. So basically, we know that with evidence-based natural medicine, we know that there are specific phytochemicals and nutrients in certain plants and herbs that literally kill the cancer cells but boost your immune system.
Yeah, and that's the problem with chemo and radiation, right? They're wiping out your immune system, which is our prime defense against the actual cancer.
Exactly. Traditional medicine uses very toxic chemicals to try to kill the cancer, but they're also killing the healthy cells and suppressing your immune system. But wonderfully, nature has provided us with specific things that kill only cancer cells and don't harm your healthy cells.
All right, so that brings us to essential number 7.
So essential number 7 is to practice very early detection and by using things like thermography and specific blood work. So let's talk about thermography. We know that the pink movement has really led women to think that mammograms are the first place for early detection. However, in 2014, there was a conclusion of a 25-year Canadian study. They worked with 50,000 women, and they found that mammograms did not affect breast cancer mortality rate at all. That mammograms were just as effective as a self-breast exam. So when you think of a mammogram, you think of the radiation. What does radiation do? Causes DNA damage, can cause cancer. The compression, if there is a small little tumor, for example, then what does that compression do to that tumor? According to the American Cancer Society, by the time a breast tumor is seen on a mammogram, it's been there for 6 to 8 years. It takes that long for it to be seen on an X-ray. On the flip side, you have technology like thermography, which is basically a technology that reads the infrared heat coming off the body. So if there's inflammation, potentially, then it can monitor physiological changes going on in the body. And it can detect unhealthy cells when it's only the size of a pinhead, 250 some cells. By the time, you find it in a mammogram, it's been there for 6 to 8 years. So wouldn't you want that kind of early detection? Now, thermography does not diagnose cancer, but it does detect physiological changes. Because if there's a tumor developing in the breast, for example, a lot of the times you're going to see blood flow, angiogenesis, because the tumor is going to create its own blood flow. So you're going to see a lot more heat, and you can actually see the patterns where that tumor is creating its own blood flow.
Crazy. Is thermography widely available, or is it expensive, covered by insurance?
Thermography is available all over the world and gaining more and more access, and used by a lot of medical doctors more and more. And as far as expense, maybe $300, and more are being covered by insurance.
I know you're the breast cancer conqueror, but can thermography be applied to detecting prostate cancer, colon cancer, all types of cancer?
It can't detect cancer, but it detects inflammation in different areas of the body. Prostate is too deep, but in a thermogram you can see the outline of a colon if there's inflammation in the colon. You can see inflammation or a cool spot on the thyroid. You can see inflammation in the liver, gallbladder area, and of course, trigger points in the neck, and carotid arteries for stroke prevention.
Okay, so the second part of essential number 7 are the blood tests. And you mentioned that there's these blood tests out there that a lot of us don't know about that could potentially save lives. Talk to me about those.
So there's a series of blood tests that are used outside of traditional medicine, unfortunately, because if they did use these tests, it would save, countless lives. But if they used them, they wouldn't know what to do with them because it detects cancer at a very, very early stage. So one test that I like to use is called the Oncoblot test. Now it looks for ENOX2 protein in the blood. ENOX2 protein is something that only cancer cells secrete. And so when they find the ENOX2 protein in the blood, they've now created algorithms where they can figure out exactly what kind of cancer it is. So with one blood test, you can determine 27 different types of cancer in the body, when it's only the size of a pinhead again, too small to be seen on traditional tests and traditional blood work. Another test that I like to use is called the Greece test, as in the country of Greece. So this research center, it's called RGCC, Research Genetic Cancer Center. They have several labs all over Europe. There's a main branch in Texas, here in the U.S. They've been doing research on cancer for 14, 15 years. And what they do is when you send a blood test to the lab, they'll filter the blood and they'll look for something called circulating tumor cells, because the tumor in a body will release circulating tumor cells. So if you have circulating tumor cells in your blood, then you have cancer. And depending on, for example, for breast cancer, the cutoff point they call is 0 to 5. That's early stage and or responding to treatment. Anything above that, we know it's becoming more aggressive. Then they also take the blood and they grow it in little petri dishes, I guess. I'm not quite sure what they do. But then they dose 50 natural extracts like vitamin C and artemisinin, which is wormwood, poly-MVA, DCA, genistein, all kinds of things, resveratrol. And they look to the kill-off percentage of those extracts on the cancer cells. So you know exactly what nutrients are going to affect the cancer. They can also do the same for chemotherapy agents. So they take 50 chemotherapy agents that are used in traditional medicine, and they look to see what the die-off is. So you then have a targeted approach to your cancer. And the beauty of it is that after you're on this protocol for about 90 days, then you can see those circulating tumor cells come down. You can also check for stem cell markers. Now, this is an area where, again, traditional medicine really misses, because stem cells are kind of the root of the cancer. If you're told by your traditional doctor that you're cancer-free, they don't see anything on a scan, your traditional blood work looks good, then that's really a disservice, because you may still have circulating tumor cells. You may still have stem cells that are being produced that are going to drive the cancer and show up a few years later, and you wouldn't have a clue.
I've heard you say something about stem cells and cancer. Like if you do chemo and radiation, the cancer might come back with a vengeance because you're not killing the stem cells. Is that true?
Correct. So what happens when you do traditional treatments like radiation and chemo, it may shrink or kill the primary cancer, but it's not affecting the circulating tumor cells, and it creates more resistant cancer stem cells, so that years down the road you wake up one morning and bam, it's in the spine, it's in the bones, it's in your lungs, and you didn't have a clue because doctors aren't monitoring that.
You mentioned that you helped people work through multiple sclerosis, and MS is something that we think is incurable and rapidly degenerative. What did you do to help them heal?
Well, MS, for example, is just another dis-ease. Again, diseases are simply symptoms that something is out of balance in the body. So with this particular person, which she happened to be a medical doctor, she came in a wheelchair, and she had a lot of metal fillings. She was very sensitive to electropollution. She was on a lot of medication. She had problems with her diet. It was really out of balance, a lot of sugar, a lot of toxic foods, a lot of emotional stuff. And so we basically started working with her, bit by bit. And 6 months later, she's using a walker, and, within the year, she's walking. But it's a process. I tell people all the time, healing is like a marathon. It's not a sprint. What's taken 10, 12 years to develop, or perhaps your whole life, doesn't go away in a couple of months. You have to give your body time to heal and to reverse things.
Okay, so we're trying to minimize the fear that comes with a daunting diagnosis like cancer or MS. How do you help people stay in hope rather than fear? Because fear, as we know, is a killer in itself.
So traditional medicine paints the picture of a very slow, torturous death when you get the diagnosis of cancer, right? You say cancer, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, right? But you don't have to fear cancer or any dis-ease for that matter. You have a large measure of control over your health. And I love what Dr. Carl Simonton has said. He wrote the book Getting Well Again, where we need to take a measure of responsibility, not just for our health, but also the emotional aspect that may have driven, that cancer, that disease. So it's, you have a large measure of control. And they're finding now that cancer can be really looked at as a metabolic disease, very similar to diabetes, that it can be managed and manageable. It's something that you can live with for a long time, that you don't have to die of cancer, that you can die and the cancer will die with you.
Do you feel like the biggest component, or where it always starts, is with the emotional, and then perhaps that's wearing down your immune system to make you more susceptible to toxins and stuff in our environment?
I would have to say that the emotional component is probably about 75%, and I know that's a big percentage, but I've worked with thousands of people from all over the world, and I have firsthand experience with it myself, so I know that the emotions play such a huge part. We know that our emotions affect our DNA, affect our ability to heal. There's little switches on our genes that can be turned off and on by our thoughts, by our lifestyle, by our stress, by the foods that we eat, the chemicals that we are exposed to. So emotionally, you're definitely looking at a serious pattern there. And books like Mind Over Medicine by Dr. Lisa Rankin. We know about the placebo effect, right? There's also the nocebo effect, where people are told that they're getting chemotherapy and you can expect these symptoms, and they have them. 50% of them have them. So the diagnosis, I call them doom and gloom doctors, who give people 6 months to live. They have no right to tell people that. They're looking at probabilities. They're not looking at possibilities. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and actually she sent me an email, and she said, the doctors told me I have 6 months to live. What can I do? And I said, don't listen to them. Don't listen to them, because you don't know what you can do to turn that around. There's always hope. Another client of mine, she was told by her oncologist that she was going to die in her bed, pissing all over herself, and she was going to die slow, torturous death. Now, why would you tell somebody that? The good news is she found me, and she started following the 7 Essentials, and she started applying these principles in her life, did a lot of emotional healing. She also did something called low-dose chemotherapy, IPT, insulin potentiating therapy. And she's reversing the cancer. She's alive and well. She still has a ways to go, but she proved them wrong. So when I hear things like that, it infuriates me, and it saddens me, because these people lose hope. And that's what happened to my father. They gave him 6 weeks to live, bam. I mean, 6 weeks he was gone.
It's so frustrating. By the way, the doctors who are telling their patients these probabilities are perpetuating that average because the patient buys into it and then spirals down to that outcome.
Exactly. And this is because of what they have in their box with their types of treatments. Yes, if you continue to do this treatment, you'll be dead in 6 weeks or 6 months, whatever. But you have to think outside of the box. You know, the body has an amazing ability to heal. Get to the cause of the cancer. Get to the cause of the disease. We're not victims of cancer. We don't wake up one morning and say, oh, the boogeyman got me. You know, we know how cancer cells work. You know, we know that cancer cells thrive in an acidic environment. They thrive where there's less oxygen. You know, they secrete proteins that keeps them from dying. So we know all these things, so let's work with that and reverse it by giving our body lots of oxygen and building our immune system and alkalizing the body and, you know, getting chiropractic adjustment and exercising and doing everything that we need to do and living a joyful life. You know, happiness is a choice. You know, we've all had childhood stuff and we've all had aches and pains and things that we've been wounded from, but happiness is a choice, and when you choose to live a happy life, I mean, your whole life opens up and changes.
Yeah, so that's part of the purpose of the summit, is to, you know, let people know that it's okay when they get that diagnosis to have that initial major reaction of fear and, you know, grief, and you have to go through those emotions and feel it, but then let's take a breath, create some space, and know that there's so much information out there, and there's so many more options than we may be led to believe, and there's so many success stories and people who have healed in our situation. And, you know, the cancer or whatever you are facing, it didn't develop overnight. You know, it's chronic, and we have time. It's, you know, not going to kill us tomorrow. Let's take that time to really find our support system and seek out options, you know, beyond conventional medicine or in conjunction with, that treats the mind, body, spirit as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point. People have time. You know, you've been diagnosed with cancer. Well, it's taken 6 to 10 years to develop the cancer. It's not going to kill you tomorrow. So take a few weeks, take a month to really get settled, understand what you're doing, make an informed decision. You know, don't jump on that conveyor belt and, you know, go through all those radical treatments right away, because so many women I've talked to and worked with regret having done that. And like you said, it's not to say that traditional medicine doesn't have its place. Sometimes the tumor is so big you may need to radiate it or have surgery. But it's about finding that balance so you can support the body's healing.
You use the term breast cancer conqueror. Why did you choose to use conqueror instead of survivor?
Well, I chose breast cancer conqueror because to me a conqueror is somebody who's had a more active role in their healing journey. You know, they've conquered, they've won, they're victorious. Whereas to me, survivor is just, well, I just barely survived what they've done to me. You know, whereas conqueror is energetically much more active, proactive, and it just feels better.
Okay, so late stage cancer. Say it's Thursday or Friday and the doctor says, you know, here's what we're dealing with. It's aggressive, it's spreading. We're going to start aggressive chemo and radiation on Monday. How do you guide the patient through that? How do you make them, you know, take a breath?
Well, with somebody who gets a, you know, late stage diagnosis, obviously there is a measure of a time factor there. But there's, rather than jumping into the full-blown chemotherapy that is going to cause a lot of toxic reactions and suppress your immune system anyway, why not do something that's less toxic? Insulin potentiating therapy, IPT, is a low-dose chemotherapy. It only uses 10%, and it's a very targeted therapy with, you know, fewer side effects. I mean, I know women who've had that done, and after they've had it done, they can go home, go shopping, and they don't lose their hair. They're not, you know, puking in a bucket for a week. I mean, they go on with life. There's all kinds of therapies, like vitamin C, IV, has been known to support the immune system and kill off cancer cells. Making sure that your vitamin D levels are optimal. I can't tell you how many women are diagnosed with breast cancer and their oncologist doesn't talk to them about vitamin D. If their vitamin D levels were optimal, that reduces their cancer risk by 83%. Just something as simple as vitamin D. Making sure that your iodine levels are sufficient, because again, thyroid iodine deficiency can certainly affect your healing journey. Making sure that you're taking medicinal mushrooms and nutrient boosting supplements that help to keep your body strong.
So do you have any fear that your cancer will come back, or are you constantly keeping tabs on yourself, your emotional health, your stress, your diet?
Oh yeah, it's a journey, right? It's not something that you say, okay, I'm better. I mean, I constantly learn new things. I mean, every week I would have to say that I learn something new from people that I work with or the research that I do. And so it's, yes, keeping a tab on things and keeping a pulse and living by the 7 essentials. I mean, that's what I've done for many, many years.
So one of my favorite proverbs is the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. And I saw that you wrote about it in your book as well. Can you explain to us how that applies to healing?
So one of my favorite proverbs is, just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, ... it became a butterfly. So for women that are going through a healing journey, or anybody, and whether it's a physical healing journey, an emotional, a financial, relationship, spiritual, whatever, you get to that point where there's fear, it may be dark, you don't know what the future holds, but if you trust in the laws of the universe, you trust and believe in your ability, and you have the courage, and you're patient with yourself, then you will transform into a happier and healthier you. Because we all have a choice, right? We can be bitter or we can be better. And I encourage women to look at cancer as a gift. And I often, get some interesting responses. How is this a gift? But really, if you allow that healing journey to transform your life, not just the physical aspect, but the whole aspect, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental, you come out on the other side a much happier and healthier you in all aspects. So it is a gift.
So in your work, do you help people reconnect with their passion or align with their purpose? Because I feel like we talked about the type C cancer personality before, and most of those people kind of forego their own passions to take care of others. Do you implement that in your work?
Absolutely. Part of the healing process is really finding your true inner joy and your greater purpose. We all have a purpose on this planet, and we all have special gifts. So, figure out what makes you happy, what brings you joy, because oftentimes, the cancer or the dis-ease may be a way for you to figure that out. Stop doing things that don't make you happy and make you miserable. Do things that bring you joy. So self-love and self-nurturing, especially when it comes to breast cancer. I love Louise Hay's work, You Can Heal Your Life. And she mentions how, breast cancer has a lot to do with not really nurturing yourself and not learning to love yourself. We all have that little inner child that no matter how perfect our upbringing may or may not have been, we can still love that person inside and take the time to do things that make you feel good, to, nurture your soul, whatever that may be for you.
Okay, so what is your one takeaway message on healing?
My one takeaway message on healing is that there's hope. Unfortunately, traditional medicine often takes away that hope. But if people realize that they have a measure of control on their health, and there's so many things out there that can support them in their healing journey, is that there's always hope.
And you've seen that in your work, where people have been told by the doctors there's zero hope, they're sent home to hospice, and you've seen them make that transformation.
I've seen people turn around because they were given hope. One of the quotes that I like to use with my team when we talk to women, and obviously we get hundreds of emails, sometimes every week, every month, and we want to treat them, people like Maya Angelou said, people will not remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And that's so important in our work, in letting women know they have a safe place to come where you will be heard and you will be nurtured and you'll be guided through this maze of information. And so you don't have to figure it all out by yourself.
So do the 7 essentials go beyond just cancer? I feel like they should apply to all chronic illnesses.
So the 7 Essentials system is a step-by-step guide that teaches you how to improve your health. And whether it's cancer or whether it's any dis-ease in the body, if you follow that guide step by step, you never have to fear cancer or any disease for that matter. So after being in practice for over 30 years, I decided to retire. And I started sharing my healing journey with a few women here and there locally in the community. And they said, people need to hear this story. So I threw up a website in 2012, and one thing led to another. Then I started having women from all over the world contact me. One of my first clients was somebody from Slovakia. I mean, I didn't even know that country existed. And I guided her through her healing journey, and now she's using the 7 Essentials and teaching people in that area of the world in her language about healing, disease and breast cancer, and using the 7 Essentials. And I mean, I've worked with women in Australia, Europe, 20 countries all over the world. It's just been amazing. And I also felt led to write a book about my healing journey. It's called Heal Breast Cancer Naturally. And I have women emailing me all the time that said they followed the 7 Essentials and they're now cancer-free. Just the other day, I was in a doctor's office visiting a friend, and a woman from Trinidad said, "You're Dr. V. I read your book, and I'm doing so much better." And, so to hear those stories is just so heartwarming, because you never know, the impact that you're going to have by sharing your own personal journey. Sometimes your biggest pain can be your biggest gift if you allow that to happen.
I love that. So in your experience, why wouldn't a person heal or recover? Is it because they fall back into fear, they're not taking responsibility, they're making the same choices they've made? What patterns have you noticed in people that don't heal?
So it's been my experience for women who don't heal when they're on a healing journey. There's often several issues. They're overwhelmed, and they're not taking time for themselves. They're not doing the emotional work. They're skipping a few of the steps. They figure, that root canal is not bothering me. It's not going to make a difference. So you really have to take this seriously. You have to go through each of those 7 steps in order to achieve true healing. You cannot continue to be super mom and be the carpool mom and do all the normal activities, because if you were using traditional medicine, you'd be laying in bed. And that's what has to happen if you're going to work with evidence-based natural medicine. You have to take the time to allow your body to heal. So timeouts in the afternoon, meditation a few times a day, taking time to juice. When you take your supplements, be grateful that you have these supplements and nutrients that are going to heal the body. Taking time for your coffee enemas, because we know that helps to detox the liver and the gallbladder so that your body can function better. So I love the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, for example, with his book, The Biology of Belief. We know that through the science of epigenetics, that your thoughts can affect how your gene expresses itself. And he's done, tremendous work to bring that in the forefront, so that people are realizing that, hey, they need to take responsibility for their thoughts and what they're thinking, because that will affect your health.
So it's a fine line when we talk about taking responsibility for our health, or our thoughts and emotions creating our circumstances, right? Because we don't want to shift it to blame. We don't want to feel blame or guilt or shame for contracting an illness or getting sick. So how do we navigate that fine line?
Right. No, that's a good point. Really, a healing journey is about self-nurturing and self-love. It's not about beating yourself up because you didn't do this perfectly or you should have done that. You know, it's about the here and the now, and it's about going forward. And it's about introspective, you know, really looking inside and really being brutally honest with yourself. I mean, it's easy to skim over things, oh, I'm fine, but being brutally honest and reading books that will help you to uncover the layers. It's like peeling an onion, right? You may have done some healing in the past, but there's more to, you know, get to the core issue. And that's life's journey. You know, we're all trying to improve on our life, but it's about being kind to yourself and not beating yourself up if you don't do everything perfectly.
Okay, so say someone in our life, a loved one, gets a diagnosis and they don't necessarily, they're really, you know, pro-conventional medicine and they don't really have an open mind to see that there's other alternatives out there or that emotions and stress play a role. How do we help them open their mind, or how do we help them at all?
So there will be some people that will hear this message and just won't resonate with it because they're just not ready to hear it, or it's just not for them. I have family members who had and have cancer and they chose to do traditional treatments. Everybody's on their journey. And when I work with women, sometimes their spouses may be supportive, sometimes they're not. Sometimes their friends are supportive, sometimes they're not. So it's about finding a community that's going to work with you and be supportive of the journey that you're on, but not everybody's going to get this.
If you had to guess, what percentage of your clients who apply the 7 essentials end up healing?
So it's difficult for me to keep statistics on people because sometimes I may work with them for a month or two and then, you know, I don't hear from them again. But in the last 6 months, I've been keeping statistics on the results of the grease test that we talk about and how the circulating tumor cells are decreasing. And I would have to say that 95% of the women who follow the protocol, we're seeing a decrease in their circulating tumor cells, and we're seeing some amazing things happen.
And why do you think that 5% isn't healing?
It's, you know, they're not doing what they need to do. You know, or, I mean, we're human, right? We're imperfect. We're going to die of something, right? And some women, you know, when you look at the emotional aspect of healing, sometimes people use dis-ease as a way to get something out of it, right? Whether maybe for the first time they're getting attention from their spouse or from their children. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, there is an emotional component there that people thrive on that disease. And I can tell you within 10 minutes of talking to somebody if that's the type of person that they are, because they're attached emotionally to that disease and they're almost enjoying it, if that seems a little...
100%. Sometimes we get attached to that label or identity and we kind of use it subconsciously to seek attention or love.
Yeah, which is sad because they like the drama and the trauma of it, you know, unfortunately. So we can, you know, we can't save the world. We try to, but it doesn't always work.